Hello, my name is Bob Tauber, and I want to welcome you all to Psychopathology Online at Antioch University. This is a class I'm pretty familiar with. Just to give you a real quick background, I've been teaching at Antioch since 1993, so when I'm recording this, that's more than 25 years ago. And psychopathology is a class that I've taught since I started teaching in Antioch. I've also taught psychological assessment and group therapy and psychopharmacology and community mental health, but this is a very familiar class. So the question is, why online? Psychopathology is considered a foundational class at Antioch, and what a foundational class means is that the material in the class is something that you can expect to need to know to pass licensing exams, whether you're going for an MFT or an LPCC. I'd say 10 years ago or so, about 20% of the questions on the MFT exam were directly related to the material in this class. And now the last exams, it's dropped a bit, somewhere between 10 and 15% of the material is related to what you're going to be studying. So that makes this a foundational class. So again, why online? Approximately 8 to 10 years ago, the state of California changed their requirements, and instead of being able to get a master's in 72 units to qualify for licensing, it went up to a minimum of 90 units. And the only way Antioch can continue to offer classes, 3 live classes in one day, was to start online classes. We never had online classes at Antioch in the day. And so I thought about all the classes I taught and thought, a couple that possibly could work online, and I tried a couple online, but the one that seemed to work the best, and the one that I'm still doing because of that, is this psychopathology class. So another thing I want to say about the psychopathology class, being a foundational class, and being given the fact that I taught it for more than 15 years live before teaching it online, you're going to notice that I tend to use one camera and a flip chart to write on and sort of try to speak to you as if I'm in front of a live class because of all of that experience. But also, this class is a challenging class and it has lots of material. It's definitely not a kind of class that you could take like I would take a traffic school class. You know, look up the answers, mark some quick answers and move forward. It's a class that requires careful study and about the same amount of time as any live class. So what I think of in terms of the time is that live classes are about 3 hours of a live meeting, and usually a couple hours outside the class for readings or assignments. And so I'd say devoting 5 hours to this class is what you should consider doing. So that's the other thing I want to tell you about it, just as the structure of this class, is that the book there's only one required book, and that book is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition. So this is the required book. I highly recommend you buy it, even though you could get access to an online version of it through the Antioch Library. Reason being, the online version doesn't have page numbers, and it's hard to locate things that we're going to be referring to. The other thing is that the process and what you're going to be learning is what's called differential diagnosis. Is it this diagnosis? Is it that? Is it bipolar 1 disorder or is it bipolar 2 disorder? And in order to really look up those differential diagnoses, it's really handy to be able to flip pages back and forth. And given the way the online version is set up, you can't do that. So hopefully you will buy a hard copy of this Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. There are other readings in the class taken from a textbook that I used for many years, and now the textbook is actually out of date, but what I've had the library do is to scan some of the important material in it, a few chapters, and upload it into your resources section. So when that comes up, you'll know because I'll be referring to those specific chapters. So it's this Maxman and Ward Essential Psychopathology. And finally, there's a book that is really handy, especially, this is completely for free on your library resources in the DSM section, Clinical Cases. Now, I don't have assignments from this, but there are ways that I'm going to recommend you use this book through the class to enrich your learning experience for the class. So that's clinical cases available in the library resource section. So those are the books. So real quick, because I know usually people want to know at first what's the work. Well, they're weekly learning activities, two different kinds. One is an assignment, so let me write that up here. Assignments. And the other one are conversation forums. Conversations. Now, these assignments and conversations open the beginning of the week, actually the Sunday before the Monday of the week, Sunday morning, and will stay open the entire week from Sunday at 8 a.m. until the following Sunday at 8 p.m. So both of these are open for a full 7.5 days. My serious recommendation is that given the amount of material that you have to look at and read and videos to look at in order to answer the questions on the assignment and to participate in the conversations about the same material, if you start with a few hours left on Sunday, it's not possible to do. So you definitely want to give yourself some time earlier in those 7.5 days to, at least look at the materials, review the materials before you get down to that deadline. You're going to run out of time, and the reality is I don't accept late submissions in this class unless there is a very, very, very serious and extraordinary circumstance, such as a medical crisis. In which case that's described in the syllabus. So I would look at the syllabus and you can see how that's handled. But for the most part, if it's not in, given the fact it's open 7.5 days, you just don't earn credit. And what credit is each one of these are worth 10 points a week, and these are worth 10 points a week, and they're 10 weeks, so that adds up to 100, and this adds up to 100. And then there's a third final case study research paper that's worth 100. But it does not come out and come up until week 9. So more on that later. So there's assignments, 10 weeks, 10 points each, 100. Conversations, 100. Total, and a paper, 100, for a total of 300. The requirement is 80 or greater on each of these in order to pass the class and on that final paper. So that's a requirement, a minimum of 80 points. So that's kind of the structural stuff in the class, but not the content of the class and what we're going to be covering. So I'm going to end this segment of the tape, and what we'll do is we'll move on to some of the overall understanding of the content that we'll be looking at. Thank you very much. That's the end of part 1. Oh, I'm back. I meant to say one other thing. I teach this class along with a partner, Louise Jansen, and in the upcoming videos, you're going to see Louise. There's actually, you can almost see a picture of her up here. Louise teaches the other section, and we were asked by Antioch to try to coordinate our sections so the materials and the assignments are as close as possible. And so they're virtually identical. But it's very important you know that I do not look at any of Louise's students, and Jansen does not look at any of my students' work. They're completely separate sections, but the assignments and the readings are the same. So I meant to mention that. So again, that's the end of part 1, and now we'll go on to part 2. Thank you.